While the 1970s are remembered for muscle cars, malaise, and the rise of personal luxury coupes, the humble sedan remained the workhorse of American families. Yet hidden among the Caprices and Gran Torinos were a handful of strange, short-lived, or regional sedans that quietly disappeared from the market and from memory. These rare four-doors weren't performance legends or bestsellers, but they're fascinating footnotes in automotive history. Here are 9 of the rarest and most forgotten sedans of the 1970s, models you've likely never heard of.
Dear viewer, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Thanks for your support.
Number 9. The 1974 Buick Apollo GSX Sedan, Dealer Special. An obscure piece of muscle car mythology that blended dealer creativity with an aging compact platform. The 1970s were a time of transition for American performance cars. The early part of the decade saw the final peak of muscle car dominance before emissions regulations, insurance hikes, and the oil crisis began dismantling the formula. By 1974, Buick's legendary GSX badge, originally associated with high-performance Skylark base coupes, like the 1970-1972 GSX, was effectively retired from production. Yet, in the shadows of corporate decision-making, a few dealerships reportedly attempted to resurrect the GSX mystique, not through factory channels, but with dealership creativity. The result was the 1974 Buick Apollo GSX sedan, a virtually unknown and unofficial muscle-themed compact sedan built on the humble bones of Buick's Nova-based Apollo. The Buick Apollo debuted in 1973 as a compact entry in Buick's lineup, sharing its underpinnings with the Chevrolet Nova, Oldsmobile Omega, and Pontiac Ventura, all built on GM's X-Body platform. The Apollo was available as 2-door coupe, 4-door sedan, 3-door hatchback, added later. Buick, being the more upscale GM brand, outfitted the Apollo with fancier trim and more insulation than its Chevrolet sibling. However, it wasn't built with performance in mind. The GS Grand Sport trim was available on the Apollo Coupe in limited form, and only in 1974. It included a handling package and optional V8s, but it was a far cry from the tire-shredding Skylark GSXs of earlier years. That didn't stop some Buick dealerships from trying to inject life into the nameplate, especially through dealer specials. The GSX badge, introduced in 1970, was Buick's answer to the GTO Judge and Oldsmobile 442W30. The GSX package was flash and fury combined, bold stripes, spoilers, and massive torque from the 455 Stage 1 engine. It was an icon of the golden age. But by 1974, the official GSX had disappeared. Still, the brand recognition was strong, and Buick's showrooms were filled with more conservative offerings. For dealers looking to move inventory and attract performance buyers, especially young drivers, a rebranded Apollo was a cheap marketing tactic. Reports from the period suggest that a handful of Buick dealers, particularly in the Midwest and parts of California, added GSX-style graphics and decals to Apollo sedans. Custom striping kits inspired by the original GSX, sporty wheels or rally rims, owner dual exhaust or upgraded shocks, dealer-added GSX badging, even on 4-door models. These were not factory authorized, but they were sold new on the lot, typically featuring base-level Apollos with some aesthetic flair to evoke performance without delivering it. Despite the GSX decals, the Apollo GSX sedan was almost always mechanically stock, and modest at that. Powertrain options in 1974 included 250 CID inline-6, a 100 horsepower, 350 CID Buick V8, a 150-165 horsepower, 350 CID V8 with 4-barrel carburetor, on GS Coupe only, a 175 horsepower. The 4-door sedans almost never received the high-output version of the 350. Most were saddled with the 2-barrel V8 or even the straight 6. Performance was sluggish by any standard. These cars were all show and no-go. Transmission choices: 3-speed manual, rare in sedans; 3-speed automatic, most common. Suspension was soft, steering vague, and acceleration uninspiring, especially when compared to what the GSX name once stood for. What made these dealer-created sedans stand out was their visual presentation. Though unofficial, the styling mimicked the famous GSX cues. Bold side stripes, usually in black or contrasting colors. GSX-style rear quarter panel graphics. GSX decals on trunk lid and front fenders. Optionally rally wheels or Krager-style mags. Some had faux hood scoops or blackout grills. These visual tricks made the cars look far more aggressive than they actually were. Some were sold to younger buyers who wanted performance on a budget, or at least the appearance of it. Number 8. The 1972 AMC Ambassador SST Braum sedan. A nearly forgotten full-size sedan that combined old-school American luxury with AMC's unique approach to value and practicality. By the early 1970s, American Motors Corporation, AMC, found itself caught between giants. As the smallest of the big four automakers after GM, Ford, and Chrysler, AMC lacked the resources to compete model for model across the entire automotive spectrum. But they tried, and perhaps nowhere was that ambition more evident than with the Ambassador, AMC's top-of-the-line full-size offering. The 1972 AMC Ambassador SST Braum sedan was a prime example of AMC's attempt to deliver traditional American luxury at a competitive price. It was big, well-equipped, and loaded with plush features. Yet it was also deeply underappreciated in its time and nearly forgotten today. This model year marked one of the final chapters for the Ambassador nameplate before it faded into history in 1974. The Ambassador had a long and storied past, dating back to the 1930s under the Nash and later Rambler nameplates. By the late 1960s and early 1970s, it had evolved into AMC's most premium vehicle, their answer to cars like the Ford LTD, Chevrolet Caprice, and Dodge Monaco. In 1972, the Ambassador was available in 3 trim levels: base, SST, Braum, top-level luxury 4-door sedan, 4-door station wagon with optional wood grain, 2-door hardtop coupe less common. The SST Braum sedan was the most luxurious sedan version, offering everything AMC could pack into a car short of calling it a limousine. But with AMC's limited budget and reach, it never quite earned the same respect as the more mainstream full-size rivals. The 1972 Ambassador wore a formal, upright design with AMC's unique touches. It wasn't flashy or aggressively styled, but it projected quiet dignity. Wide front grille with horizontal bars, flanked by rectangular headlamps. Sculpted sides with wheel arch flares and full-length trim. Padded vinyl roof, standard on Braum. Signature opera windows on the C-pillar, in coupe variants, not sedans. Tasteful Braum badging and deluxe chrome accents. The design leaned toward conservative American luxury, similar in tone to what Mercury and Chrysler were offering, but with fewer flourishes. Unlike many of its rivals, AMC didn't mess around with underpowered base engines in the Ambassador. Every 1972 Ambassador came standard with a V8, a bold move that emphasized its upscale positioning. Engine choices included 304 Kide V8, 150 horsepower base engine, 360 Kide V8, 175 optional, common in Braum's, 401 Kide V8, 235 horsepower, optional, rare but available. These were solid power plants, sourced from AMC's in-house V8 lineup. Mated to the Torque Command 3-speed automatic, they delivered adequate performance for a car this size. Number 7, the 1975 Pontiac Grand Dam sedan, a 4-door muscle-inspired anomaly from the twilight of Pontiac's performance era. The Pontiac Grand Dam name conjures images of sporty coupes and sleek styling from the mid-1970s and later compact cars of the 1980s and 90s. But in its original 1973-1975 form, the Grand Dam was a bold attempt to blend European road manners with American muscle aesthetics. Pontiac billed it as the best of both worlds, a grand touring car with Trans Am muscle. While most remember the 2-door coupe, Pontiac quietly built a 4-door Grand Am sedan for just 2 model years, 1974 and 1975. It was never a big seller, and less than 10,000 units were made during its entire run. The 1975 model marked the final year of this unusual variant before Pontiac abandoned the idea entirely. In the early 1970s, Pontiac's leadership under John DeLorean sought to counter the growing appeal of European imports like BMW and Mercedes-Benz. The plan was to offer an American alternative that could handle better than a bloated domestic land yacht, offer luxury and style on par with Cadillac, retain the V8 power and flair Pontiac was known for. Thus was born the Pontiac Grand Dam, introduced in 1973 as a high-content variant of the A-body Le Mans platform. Built alongside the GTO, it was intended to be a premium performance model in both coupe and sedan form. But while the coupe had a clear sporting identity, the sedan was a harder sell. The 1975 Grand Dam sedan arrived as part of the last run of the original Grand Dam before it was temporarily canceled in 1976 to be revived as a downsized model in 1978. The car shared its platform with the Le Mans and Grand Le Mans but offered unique styling, mechanical upgrades, and interior luxury. It was available only as a four-door pillared sedan, not a hardtop, and was the rarest Grand Dam body style of the era. The 1975 Grand Dam sedan retained the aggressive styling cues of its coupe sibling, but in a more restrained package. Endura urethane nose, a Pontiac signature, with sharp grille and quad headlamps. Sculpted fenders and sporty body side creases. Pontiac's trademark louvered rear windows, which look better on the coupe. Four-door configuration with formal C-pillars and framed windows. Grand Dam, script badging on the fenders and rear deck. The result was a car that looked like a GTO from the front, but with the practical proportions of a family sedan. It was a styling contradiction, part muscle, part formal. Despite being a sedan, the 1975 Grand Dam still packed legitimate performance under the hood, at least by mid-1970s standards. Engine options included 400 CID V8, 170 to 180 horsepower, standard in most models. 455 CID V8, 200 horsepower, optional limited availability. All engines were mated to a 3-speed automatic, though a 4-speed manual was The Grand Dam's interior was one of its major selling points. Designed to evoke a mix of luxury and European sportiness, it offered strato bucket seats with optional reclining passenger seat, optional real walnut wood trim on the dash and console, rally gauges with tachometer, floor-mounted shifter with center console, optional on sedans, optional leather upholstery, power windows, tilt wheel, cruise and air conditioning. Unlike most four-door muscle sedans, the Grand Dam felt luxurious and driver-focused, especially when optioned well. The Grand Dam sedan had a confused identity in the marketplace. Buyers who wanted a sporty Pontiac usually gravitated toward the Grand Prix, larger, more luxurious, Le Mans Sport Coupe, cheaper, Firebird Trans Am, actual performance car. Meanwhile, those shopping for sedans wanted comfort, not performance posturing. As a result, the Grand Dam sedan struggled to justify its existence. 1974 production, 8,400 units. 1975 production, 3,200 units. Total sedan production, 2 years, under 12,000 units. Compare that to nearly 90,000 coupes built over the same span, and it's clear the sedan was a niche offering that never caught on. Pontiac quietly dropped the sedan after 1975 and focused future Grand Dam development on coupes and later compact platforms. Number 6. The 1979 Chrysler LeBaron Medallion sedan. A downsized luxury car that was intended to redefine Chrysler prestige, but instead quietly faded into obscurity. As the 1970s drew to a close, the American automotive industry was undergoing rapid transformation. Downsizing, emissions mandates, rising fuel prices, and shifting consumer expectations left traditional luxury sedans looking bloated and out of touch. Chrysler, long known for large V8-powered cruisers like the New Yorker and Imperial, was scrambling to modernize its lineup without sacrificing its image. Enter the 1979 Chrysler LeBaron Medallion sedan, a car that represented Chrysler's attempt to bring luxury into a smaller, more efficient package. Built on a modified compact platform, the Medallion was the most expensive LeBaron variant and came packed with features. But despite its intentions, it failed to resonate with the market. It's now largely forgotten, and examples in clean condition are extraordinarily rare. The LeBaron name had previously been used on Imperial's top trims and coach-built models, evoking high luxury. In 1977, Chrysler repurposed the LeBaron name as its new compact luxury offering, essentially a fancier Dodge Aspen/Plymouth Belvadier based on Chrysler's F-body platform. By 1979, the LeBaron had become a standalone Chrysler-branded model, sitting just below the New Yorker and aimed at buyers who wanted luxury in a more manageable size. The Medallion trim was introduced as the flagship version of the LeBaron lineup, promising full-size amenities in a downsized body. It was Chrysler's response to cars like Buick Regal Limited, Mercury Cougar XR7, Oldsmobile Cutlass Supreme Braum. The 1979 LeBaron Medallion sedan was meant to look dignified and classy, but its boxy and upright lines were already beginning to feel outdated. A formal, upright front end with a prominent waterfall grille. Hidden headlamps, optional on some trims, standard on Medallion. Opera windows. Landau-style padded vinyl roof. Fussy chrome detailing, including rocker panel trim and hood ornament. Medallion script badging on the fenders and trunk. Color-matched wheel covers or wire wheels as options. While the styling was tasteful and clearly aimed at traditional luxury buyers, it lacked the bold flair of Chrysler's earlier years. It appeared overdressed on a small frame, and many critics felt it looked like a gussied-up compact rather than a true luxury car. The LeBaron Medallion wasn't built for performance, but it came with competent, if uninspiring, engine options. 225 CID slant 6, 90 horsepower, base engine, rarely optioned on Medallion. 318 CID V8, 135 horsepower, most common engine in the Medallion. 360 CID V8, 150 to 170 horsepower, optional, not widely used due to fuel economy. All engines were paired with the TorqueFlite 3-speed automatic, Chrysler's venerable and smooth shifting transmission. Inside, the 1979 Medallion boasted near full-size luxury accoutrements, squeezed into a mid-size shell. Chrysler emphasized comfort and softness above all. Standard or optional interior features included pillow-tufted velour or leather upholstery, deep-cut carpet and faux wood trim on dash and door panels, power windows, power seats, and power locks, tilt steering wheel and cruise control, option AM/FM 8-track or cassette stereo, rear window defroster and intermittent wipers, fully insulated cabin for a quieter ride. Though generously equipped, Chrysler's build quality during this period was inconsistent, with rattly trim, squeaks, and electrical gremlins being common complaints. Interior plastics and switchgear were often subpar compared to more refined imports arriving on the scene. The LeBaron Medallion sedan suffered from an identity crisis. It was too expensive and plush for value-conscious buyers, but lacked the prestige and performance that traditional Chrysler luxury owners expected. A base 1979 LeBaron sedan cost around $5,500, but a Medallion sedan could easily crest $7,500 to $8,000 when fully optioned, nearing Cadillac territory. It faced stiff competition from GM's mid-size coupes and sedans, which had more style. Number 5, the 1972 Mercury Montego MX Braum sedan, a luxurious mid-size sedan that tried to blend premium features with mainstream practicality, but was ultimately overshadowed. In the early 1970s, Mercury, Ford's mid-tier division, found itself trying to define its identity between the mass-market Ford and the upscale Lincoln brand. Positioned as a more refined, slightly sportier alternative to Ford, Mercury introduced a range of sedans, coupes, and wagons, among them the Montego, which served as Mercury's counterpart to the Ford Torino. At the top of the Montego lineup for 1972 sat the MX Braum sedan, a well-appointed four-door with luxury flourishes, big car styling, and optional V8 power. While it offered comfort and features, it never caught the public's imagination, and it faded quickly from view, especially after the Mercury Cougar absorbed Montego's role just a few years later. The Montego nameplate had been introduced in 1968 and was marketed as Mercury's version of the Fairlane/Torino mid-size line. The Montego came in multiple trims: Base MX, MX Braum, Top of the Line, GT, Sportier Coupe, Villager, Wagon. For 1972, Mercury gave the Montego a fresh restyle with formal rooflines, heavy chrome accents, and body-on-frame construction typical of the era. The MX Braum sedan was the plushest four-door version available, aiming to deliver a near full-size feel in a mid-size package. The 1972 Montego MX Braum sedan shared its basic bones with the Ford Torino, but was decked out with upscale touches to give it a premium Mercury identity. Formal upright grille with vertical bars and Mercury crest, quad headlamps framed in bright bezels, vinyl roof standard on Braum models, often in contrasting colors, common rocker moldings, wheel lip trim, and wide beltline accent. Subtle Braum script on the fenders or C-pillar, open deluxe wheel covers or wire-style hubcaps. The styling was elegant in a conservative early 70s American way. It had a big car presence, especially with the vinyl roof and chrome, but it was also relatively anonymous in a sea of similar-looking sedans. Inside, the MX Braum was all about comfort. Mercury emphasized plush materials, sound insulation, and convenience features that rivaled some full-size models. Interior features included deep-cut carpeted floor mats, upholstery choices in vinyl or cloth, often brocade, with button-tufted detailing, simulated wood-grain dash and door trim, optional power windows, power locks and power driver seat, tilt steering wheel, cruise control, and air conditioning, optional AM/FM stereo or 8-track player. The cabin was quiet and cushioned, geared toward older buyers or families seeking refinement. While far from sporty, the MX Braum delivered a comfortable ride and upscale feel, especially when loaded with options. Common upgrade, 153 to 177 horsepower 400 CID V8-, optional in some models, 429 CID V8-, available but rare in 1972 as emissions and insurance costs rose. All engines were paired to a 3-speed automatic transmission, and the car was geared for smooth, quiet cruising rather than spirited driving. The 351 V8 was the most popular choice for the MX Braum, offering decent torque and quiet operation. But smog controls and detuned compression meant performance was sluggish by muscle-era standards. On the road, the MX Braum offered what buyers in this class expected: a soft, isolated ride and vague but predictable handling. Features like power steering, front disc brakes, soft suspension with long travel, sound-deadening insulation ensured the car soaked up bumps and remained quiet at highway speeds. However, cornering grip was minimal, steering feel was numb, and acceleration, even with the 351, was modest. It wasn't a performance car, but rather a comfortable commuter or family car with a few prestige cues. Number 4, the 1970 Plymouth Belvadier 1 Police Sedan. A fleet market bruiser built for speed, service, and hard miles, now nearly extinct outside of the deepest corners of Mopar history. In the late 1960s and early 1970s, the big three automakers had fierce competition, not just in the showrooms for muscle cars, but in the government and law enforcement fleet sector. Police departments demanded speed, reliability, and rugged construction, all at a reasonable cost. Chrysler, through its Plymouth division, had long supplied fleet sedans and pursuit vehicles, often with detuned versions of their performance engines. One such vehicle was the 1970 Plymouth Belvadier 1 Police Sedan, a Spartan stripped-down fleet car available with powerful V8s, heavy-duty hardware, and very little concern for civilian comforts. Rarely seen today, the Belvadier 1 Police Sedan is a hidden chapter in Mopar muscle lore, a utilitarian cousin to the Roadrunner and GTX that served in silence and mostly disappeared without fanfare. By 1970, the Plymouth Belvadier nameplate was nearing the end of its run. Once a high-end model in the 1950s, it had steadily moved down market, replaced in prestige by the Satellite and Fury lines. For 1970, the Belvadier 1 was a fleet-only model, offered exclusively to government agencies, taxi services, and police departments. This model sat below the Satellite in trim and was purpose-built for budget buyers or institutional fleets. It wasn't advertised to the public and lacked the frills of showroom models, but could be optioned with serious mechanical equipment. The Belvadier 1 Police Sedan looked like a bare-bones version of the standard B-body sedan, slab-sided, upright, and completely devoid of chrome flair. Plain front grille and bumper, shared with Satellite base models, No vinyl roof, no decorative badging, no wheel trim, dogdish hubcap standard, heavy-duty steel wheels with reinforced lugs, option spotlight mounts, push bumpers and roof wiring for beacons. Belvadier 1 badging, often omitted entirely on police spec cars. The design said everything. I'm here to work. There was no pretense of luxury or sportiness, only functionality. Where the Belvadier 1 truly earned its stripes was under the hood. While the base engine was a 225/6 or a 318 small block V8, police spec cars could be ordered with real Mopar muscle. Engine options, depending on department and intended use. 318 SID V8 function, 230 HP, used in administrative/taxi units. 383 SID V8, 2-barrel or 4-barrel, 290 to 330 HP, 1440 SID V8, Magnum or HP, 350 plus HP, used in high-speed pursuit units. The 440-powered Belvadier 1 was essentially a sleeper muscle car in sedan form, faster than most street cars and able to sustain triple-digit highway speeds. Transmission options included 3-speed torque flight automatic A727, the go-to for durability. Police package Belvadiers were fitted with firm-duty torsion bars and leaf springs, heavy-duty shocks and sway bars, reinforced frame and body mounts, upgraded brake linings and shoes, power front discs optional. The ride was stiff and controlled, handling was competent by early 70s standards, but performance was measured in chase longevity and control, not corner-carving finesse. The 1970 Belvadier 1 police sedan was never sold to the public, and Chrysler did not maintain precise production records broken down by fleet police builds. However, it was built in low numbers, strictly for agencies. Most were scrapped or crashed after their fleet duty. Civilian survivors are exceptionally rare. Few collectors recognize them, and few exist in restored form. Occasionally, unrestored survivors turn up with original 440 Pursuit engines, spotlight holes in the A-pillars, fender tag codes confirming A38 police package. Collectors in the Mopar police community have begun preserving these cars, but they remain deeply niche, hidden muscle cars whose role was never to shine, only to serve. The 1970 Belvadier 1 police sedan didn't appear in car magazines or muscle car calendars. It didn't win drag races or become a pop culture icon. Number 3, the 1978 Oldsmobile Omega SX sedan. A rare attempt by Oldsmobile to inject sporty flavor into a compact, economy-minded platform. By the late 1970s, General Motors had entered a full swing of downsizing, cost-cutting, and nameplate recycling. Compact and X-body platforms were shared widely across divisions, and the Oldsmobile Omega was no exception. Based on the Chevrolet Nova, the Omega was Oldsmobile's entry into the compact car segment, intended to add a touch of class and refinement to a practical, unglamorous base. In 1978, in a fleeting attempt to capitalize on what little performance appeal remained in the compact market, Oldsmobile introduced the SX trim level, a lightly sportified version of the Omega. It was mostly cosmetic, and though more were sold as coupes, a few four-door sedans were produced as well. Today, the 1978 Omega SX sedan is a nearly forgotten relic, a car built for no one in particular, marketed with little conviction, and preserved by almost no one. Introduced in 1973, the Oldsmobile Omega was part of GM's attempt to give its divisions their own version of the X-body platform. It slotted below the Cutlass in size and price, but carried a more upscale image than its Chevy and Pontiac siblings, Nova and Ventura respectively. From the start, the Omega struggled with identity. It wasn't luxurious enough to be a true Oldsmobile, and not sporty or cheap enough to draw younger buyers. By 1978, the nameplate was nearing the end of its RWD life before being reborn as a front-wheel drive hatchback in 1980. The SX trim was introduced in this twilight year as a way to revive interest and appeal to a shrinking group of performance-minded customers. The 1978 Omega SX sedan was essentially an appearance package grafted onto the standard four-door Omega body. The base car had a plain, upright design, squared-off fenders, a chrome egg crate grille, and tall greenhouse, but the SX added a few racy touches. Rally wheels with trim rings, borrowed from other GM sporty models, bold SX striping and decals on the lower body and rear quarters, blackout grille and trim on some examples, Open vinyl roof, a frequent odd pairing with sport graphics. No aerodynamic tweaks or unique front-rear fascia. The result? A somewhat confused look. Part retiree special, part junior street machine. The sedan's formal roofline and tall proportions made it hard to take seriously as a performance car. The SX badge didn't guarantee big power, but it did offer more than the standard six-cylinder, base engine, 231 CID Buick V6, around 105 horsepower, standard on most SX sedans. Optional, 305 CID Chevrolet V8, around 140 to 145 horsepower. Transmission, 3-speed automatic, or, rarely, a 3-speed manual. Rear-wheel drive, solid rear axle, no performance-tuned suspension by default. Though the V8 added some grunt, performance was underwhelming. 0 to 60 miles per hour in the Omega SX sedan was a marketing anomaly. Too soft and conservative for younger performance buyers, too plain and noisy for traditional Oldsmobile luxury customers, outclassed by the Cutlass Salon, which offered more power and prestige, eclipsed by the Chevy Nova Rally, which was cheaper and better known, swallowed up by the onslaught of imports from Datsun, Toyota, and Honda. Oldsmobile sold only a tiny number of SX trim sedans. Most went to dealers as demo models or low-level incentives. Coupes fared slightly better in terms of production, but the SX name was quietly dropped after one model year. Very few 1978 Omega SX sedans survive today. Why? Low production numbers, especially sedans. Fleet-like treatment, many were used as family cars or daily beaters. Poor rust-proofing, especially in the rocker panels and trunk. No collector buzz around the model or trim. Parts interchangeability made many SXs cannibalized to restore Novas. At car shows or auctions, the SX is almost never seen. A true SX sedan with correct decals, wheels, and trim in good condition is a needle-in-a-haystack level find, but still lacks mainstream value. Number 2, the 1976 Ford Elite 4-door concept, a car that never made it to production, but represented a curious what-if in the evolution of personal luxury vehicles in the 1970s. In the 1970s, the American auto market was deeply enamored with personal luxury coupes, big two-door cars that promise comfort, prestige, and style. Ford had found success with the Elite, a Thunderbird-inspired upscale version of the Torino that delivered big looks for a slightly smaller budget. It was a sales success, particularly among middle-class buyers who wanted the flair of a Thunderbird or Continental Mark IV, but at a more reasonable price. But behind the scenes, Ford was exploring new directions. One such experiment was the 1976 Ford Elite 4-door concept, a test-bed sedan version of its popular coupe, never offered to the public, but shown in internal styling clinics to gauge customer interest. While it never reached showrooms, the 4-door Elite is an intriguing chapter in Ford history, one that reveals the blurred lines between luxury, practicality, and marketing ambition in the mid-1970s. Launched in 1974 as a renamed Grand Torino Elite, the Ford Elite sat at the top of the Torino lineup. It was designed to compete with Chevrolet Monte Carlo, Pontiac Grand Prix, Chrysler Cordoba. With its long hood, opera windows, vinyl roof, and plush interior, the Elite embodied the personal luxury aesthetic of the time. By 1976, it had become a well-established player in the segment, appealing to older buyers seeking style over speed. But despite the popularity of the coupe, Ford executives began asking, could the Elite brand be extended into a full-size 4-door format? In 1976, Ford quietly commissioned a small number of Elite 4-door prototypes for internal evaluation and focus groups. These cars were not full-scale production prototypes, but rather modified versions of the Torino or LTD2 4-door sedans, dressed up with Elite-specific cues to see how buyers would respond. A formal, squared-off roofline with opera windows in the C-pillars. Elite-style front fascia, grille, and hidden headlights. Prop chrome banding side moldings, and bright trim typical of the Elite coupe. Unique badging or decals reading Elite on the rear fenders. The interior was reportedly fitted with bucket seats, faux wood grain, and upscale trim, mirroring the coupe's appointments. The goal was to create a four-door Thunderbird Lite, something that could offer family-sized practicality without sacrificing the upscale image. Under the skin, these elite four-door concepts were largely standard intermediates, based either on the 1976 Gran Torino sedan or pre-production versions of the 1977 LTD2 sedan. Engines and mechanicals were likely carried over. 351 Windsor or Cleveland V8s, optionally 400 CD V8 point, 3-speed automatic transmission, soft suspension, tuned for comfort. Despite the investment in design and clinics, the Elite four-door never made it past the evaluation stage. Several factors led to its cancellation. The Elite was already a sub-brand of the Torino, which itself was transitioning to become the LTD2. Adding a four-door Elite could have cannibalized sales of the LTD Braum or the full-size LTD. The personal luxury market remained firmly biased toward two-door models. Four-door personal cars blurred the lines too much and risked losing the very exclusivity that made coupes appealing. With fuel economy and emissions regulations tightening, Ford was already preparing to downsize its full-size cars by 1977. Expanding the Elite line would have added unnecessary complexity just as the company was shifting platforms. In 1977, the Thunderbird itself was downsized onto the LTD2 platform, effectively becoming the car the Elite might have evolved into. With the Thunderbird moving down market, there was simply no room for an Elite-branded sedan in Ford's lineup. The Elite four-door concept never reached showrooms. The few styling models and test vehicles built were likely crushed after evaluation, a standard practice for concept mules that were never federally certified. Number 1, the 1971 Dodge Coronet Crestwood sedan, a rare badge-engineered oddity built for fleets, not families. The early 1970s were a time of shifting priorities at Chrysler. As full-size sedans became more expensive and fuel economy pressures loomed, intermediate models like the Dodge Coronet grew in importance for government, police, and taxi fleets. While most people remember the Crestwood name as a line of stylish station wagons in Dodge's intermediate lineup, very few know that in 1971, Dodge quietly released a Coronet Crestwood sedan variant, a nameplate normally reserved for wagons, awkwardly grafted onto a bare-bones four-door for fleet sales only. Built in very small numbers and sold almost exclusively to government buyers, the 1971 Crestwood sedan was stripped down, utilitarian, and destined to be discarded. Today it is virtually extinct, surviving only in grainy brochures and obscure fleet records. Dodge introduced the Crestwood trim level in 1969 as the upscale offering for its Coronet wagon lineup. These wagons featured wood-grain sides, nicer trim, and better interior appointments, positioned just below the premium Polara and Montego full-size models. Crestwood wagons were popular with large families, suburban commuters, and even some police agencies needing capacious cargo haulers. However, Dodge made a strange decision in 1971. It extended the Crestwood name to a sedan variant, likely to create nameplate consistency across fleet body styles for buyers ordering multiple vehicle types, capitalize on the recognizability of the Crestwood name in municipal procurement circles, reuse trim and badging without investing in new marketing. But to the general public, the Crestwood sedan was invisible. It was never promoted, never offered in brochures, and not intended for regular customers. The 1971 Crestwood sedan was essentially a Coronet four-door with the most basic trim and some odd Crestwood emblems added. Standard Coronet front fascia, shared with all 1971 Coronet sedans. No chrome wheel trim, no vinyl roof. Dog dish hubcaps over black steel wheels. Crestwood badges on the rear quarter panels, inherited from wagons. Plain side moldings or none at all. The car looked exactly like a municipal fleet sedan or government transport, and that's what it was. With no special bodywork, it blended into traffic and left no memorable visual impact. As a fleet-only model, the Crestwood sedan interior was about function over comfort. Vinyl bench seats, front and rear, rubber floor mats, not carpet, minimal dashboard with warning lights instead of full gauges, manual windows and locks, Champs optionally partition setup for police or taxi use, AM radio optional, rarely installed. The cabin was designed for wear, not warmth, It was made for officers, taxi drivers, city clerks, or field agents to hop in, get to work, and move on. The Crestwood sedan was often ordered with the smallest engine available, but a few higher performance configurations did exist, depending on intended use. 225 CID Slant 6, around 145 horsepower, the budget choice. 318 CID V8, common in light-duty government cars. 360 or 383 CID V8s, possible in police or rural service versions. 440 CID V8 Magnum, rare, likely ordered for highway patrol or pursuit packages. 3-speed torque flight automatic standard across most builds. Fleet-spec Crestwoods might also include heavy-duty alternators and batteries, upgraded brakes and cooling systems, certified calibration speedometers, reinforced suspension and frame components. Some state patrol departments may have used Crestwood sedans as interim highway units, though full-size Polaras were more typical for that job. The Crestwood sedan was never available to retail customers. It was built purely for municipal and state governments, police departments, rental and taxi companies, tractors needing low-cost transportation. This model did not appear in Dodge's consumer brochures. It could only be found in fleet ordering guides, often grouped under fleet codes and ordering packages, not shown to dealerships or private buyers.